Final patron question is from D, saying, what are your thoughts on gender? Would it surprise you to know that the Talmud contains 8 gender designations? Well,
The
no,
hell?
because I knew this because I
didn't know that.
I actually qualified for like a Jewish studies minor at my university. And my favorite one of the different Talmud gender designations is a gender designation called tum-tum. And I will always remember that, or maybe it's pronounced tum-tum. But I just love that. I love that, how it sounds. So I've always remembered that.
Wait, so this just throws everything out the window when it comes to like you're destroying tradition and all that. I mean, I thought like any traditions that went beyond having the two genders was like some, like the Eastern cultures or some tribes or something. I didn't know Abrahamism has also a tradition, has in its tradition going beyond 2 genders. So where is this argument that this is like this has always been the case, 2 genders comes from? Like even if Abrahamism has a history of not going beyond 2 genders, it's just pure nonsense.
With like Victorian sexual norms.
This is all just recent history, and people act like it's been ingrained in time and space itself. People people think like it was like, a fraction of a second after the Big Bang, the definitions of gender was ingrained within nature.
It's so true.
Before
there was. What are your thoughts on gender? That's like a very broad question. I think
I was gonna make a joke, but you
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say before there was hydrogen, there was gender, but like anyway.
So worth it. My thoughts on gender are that like most people do feel comfortable and align the most with the gender roles that are associated with their sex, but that this isn't it shouldn't be like mandated. It shouldn't be socially prescribed, but it also shouldn't be expected that people aren't like inclined to just like behave that way, like have it be okay. Like a lot of people like those things. Like not everything needs to be completely deconstructed. But people should have the freedom and not have social pressure to be within like very tightly controlled gender roles. But if people do like it, that's okay. If people don't, that's okay. I just think that there should be a lot less. I feel like people on every side of the gender debate are very intense about it. Like, can we just like bring the intensity down a little bit?
Okay,
and just like
on.
let
That's
people kind of. I know that's completely unrealistic, but it makes the conversation a lot harder when people are like.
I mean, have you been born yesterday? Can we like? Of course we can't do that, Susanna. Like, what are you?
I know.
Where have you been living? Okay, but here's. I'm a gender abolitionist, right? I just don't think the concept of gender makes any sense, right? Like, what? Okay, so there's gender and there's sex, and if you think about what gender is basically stereotypes about what your behavior is supposed to be like, and who gives like. That doesn't make any goddamn sense to me. It shouldn't make any sense to anybody, right? Yes, like we have sex, that's a biological term, and there are certain attitudes and behavior that usually goes with your biological sex that you're born, and sometimes it doesn't, right? Gender is about, and there is a correlation between, there. Okay, so the Wokistani Mujahideen, right? They act like your biology has no impact on the things that you like and your behavior, and that's ridiculous. But also people who are on the other side, they're also extremists in the way that they think like just because there's a correlation between our attitudes and the things that we like and our behavior and our biology, then there's an expectation of what is supposed to be the norm. And
if it isn't followed, Western civilization is going to fall.
Yeah, the sky will fall, right? Like
Jesus Christ.
Like, okay, just because most people, so what gender is it takes those biological realities, right, and then observes, because gender is an identity. It's not just about your biological reality, right? It's just say like, okay, so because this is the norm of behavior, we're going to assign this stereotype to this sex, and we're going to expect it as an identity. I think I have male, right? And I think that's dangerous. That's almost as the same thing as, that's almost like a social mandate in my I'm completely okay with completely destroying the concept of nature, of gender, nature. Oh, Freudian slip. Yeah, I'm
Pause.
like
Masks
anti-nature. Yes,
lips.
mask slips. Like, no, like, yeah, because I think like people should be more free to just, I mean, I think there's utility in just giving a more wider range. Yeah, that's, yeah. Tell people what you think about what I said, and I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. I mean, well, a gender abolition means a lot of different things to different people. Like when people think like, oh well, I don't even think we should have gender. We should just have this person, and everyone has their own gender. I think that's like completely ridiculous.
I'm back.
And
I'm back.
like, where's the utility in that? We need words to quickly communicate ideas across languages. No one's got time for that.
See, right? Okay, so we can't get rid of the gender completely overnight, okay? But we will one day, okay? Because it's too ingrained in our society, okay? Um, it is a social construct, right? That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Social constructs do exist. Just like a contract exists, banks exist, money exists. These are all social contracts. Some of them are useful. Some of them yeah, I am a gender abolitionist, right? Some of them are not so useful, and I think the concept of gender is a societal expectation. Yeah, so gender is an identity. It's a social construct that is more harm, like it has more harm than benefit, because it gives you an identity, and it comes with a set of expectations based on that identity. Okay, I think anybody who's an individualist should be against gender identities, right? Because at the end of the day, yeah, I think that I am Armin, you're Susanna, okay, you're D, you're Asian American, okay, and why are we grouping me with a whole bunch of other people, and giving us an identity definition? That's a form of collectivism, in my
Because I
opinion.
have a
That's
shared
form of,
experience on the basis of my sex.
see, you said sex,
Yes, which informs
okay,
my gender.
so
For
you
me,
didn't. Yeah, okay, but I'm just saying that you didn't say gender, so that's actually, I think that's very telling, right? I think those shared experiences could be, when what you could do is just be like, okay, we're having a shared experience, right? You don't have to form a collective around that. You know what I mean? You don't, because okay, exactly. That's exactly my point, Susanna. All right. So if you want to find a group of people to relate to, you look for that shared experience. You don't look for an identity that is associated with someone's sex, because now you're creating an expectation of that shared identity, of that shared experience, rather than just looking for that shared experience, right? Because if somebody has that sex but doesn't have that shared experience, if you associate the sex with that shared experience, now you have the expectations of that shared experience for somebody that has that sex. But why would you do that to them? Just go look for the shared experience for somebody to relate to, rather than having an expectation of that shared experience based
it's
on
not
someone's
rocket
sex.
science. It's because that's who's most likely to have, most probable
Most
to have had that shared
that's an
experience.
anti.
It's not a certainty,
Okay,
but it's a likelihood.
that's an anti-minority. That's why we have to come and defend minorities. That's the whole point. When we say that's
I'm not coming
the whole
after anyone. What are you talking about?
you're creating an expectation. Okay, so this is what it does, right? This is what, like, creating gender identity does, right? You're like, so okay, the Wokistani Mujahideen is they completely ignore the correlation between sex and these types of shared experiences or behavior or wants and needs and stuff like that, right? I'm not going that far, but but just because a majority, there's a correlation that reflects a majority of people, and you're like, well, this is a reality. Well, I'm not denying that that's a reality. I understand that there's a correlation here, okay? But part of activism requires us to defend minorities, right? Like that. That's why, yeah, because the majority have that experience. If the hold on, let me finish this part. The whole point of us being involved in this form of activism is because the majority are like that. Because if the majority weren't like that, there wouldn't be a minority that would require defending. I know the majority are like that, right? But that's why we need to get involved, because the minority are now because this is, if you turn when you turn a correlation into, I'm not saying you, by you I don't mean Susanna, but I'm saying society, okay? When society turns a correlation into an expectation, there's now a mandate for the minority to conform, to be accepted, to blend in, or be ostracized. Okay, and just the label of, just the idea of a gender identity will create that expectation, because gender identity is way more than biology. You have to, like, people have to accept that sex is biology. Gender identity is connected to biology, but it's much more than biology. Okay, it's not just like these right-leaning people who are like, oh, you're denying biology. If gender identity was just biology, then we wouldn't have different concepts of sex and gender. Okay, gender is much more than that. Okay, and because it's much more than that, what is it? What's on top of biology that is gender? It's norms. And what is norms? Norms are expectations. And if there's expectations and there's a minority that doesn't fit into that, then the expectation is basically ostracizing the minority. So just when it comes to our behavior, when it comes to our wants and needs, there shouldn't be a mandate. There shouldn't be an expectation. There should be not 2, not 8, not 1,000. There should be 2,000 genders at some point, to the point that there is one gender for every goddamn person.
That's insane.
You don't understand what I'm saying.
We have to have a way to talk about things, because there are common characteristics across millions of people. How do we talk about these things at large? And we're not making expectations just by trying to talk about a largely observable thing in society. Like, language has to have a utility.
You cut me exactly at a point where it makes it possible for you to completely miss my opportunity. Okay, miss my point that I'm trying to say.
Okay,
I don't. That is like very irresponsible way of like I am really trying to make a point here, okay? And that was a really bad point to cut me off, okay?
I'm sorry.
Because my point is not to have like. My point is not to have like 1,000 genders. I'm just trying to make it so like we have like it has to become a useless thing, right? So I wanted to, on purpose, for it to become a ridiculous thing, right? So when you say it's ridiculous, that was what I was trying to get to when you didn't let me like make the point. Was I was trying to say like it needs to be something that loses its utility, right? People are like, okay, this is ridiculous now. Well, yeah, good. How about we just get rid of it, right? And this is individualism. This is about me being Armin, you being Susanna, everybody being their own individual, and we will, instead of having, it's kind of like I don't know, like it's like fashion. It's not like you wear this, and these are the 2 options. How about we have a gazillion options? How about everybody's identity and behavior and expectations are set to that individual? And you're like, people are like, we need to communicate. Well, what do you need to communicate? Do you need to communicate people's sexes? Because I'm not a sex abolish, like I'm not abolishing sex. What exactly do you need to communicate? what it is that what is it that is being communicated? Because if you're communicating sex, we already have words for that, and we already have ways to refer to that. But if you are referring to gender, and you like, I need to be able to refer to that, then the thing that is being referred to is expectations. Like, excuse me, I'm sorry, if you are saying that I need to be able to refer to the societal expectations that I have of what you're supposed to be like, then no. I'm sorry. Yeah, you want to communicate that? Like, well, I want to. It's not just the communication that is being removed. It's the whole concept being removed. So what you need to communicate to a concept that is completely being removed, it's as if somebody saying like, oh, I have a word for, Jews that, betray their own kind. Like, okay, that's a harmful term to use. Like, well, we need to communicate. Like, well, I'm not just removing your form. I'm not just removing your word. Like, people act like there's a thing that is supposed to exist, and what we were trying to do is remove the word that is referring to that concept. No, I'm removing the entire concept. Just like abolishing caste. They're like, okay, if we want to abolish caste, somebody like, well, we need words to refer to things. I'm not saying keep caste and remove the words that refer to the caste, and now we're like, oh my God, we can't communicate. No, we're abolishing the concept itself, so there's no word to refer to something that doesn't even exist. Anyways, does that make sense? I know we disagree, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you in that I would like it to be useless. I would like it to not have an impact on people's life. I would like it to be useless in the sense that it does not impact people's lives. I still think even at that point, it would be useful to have common language to talk about these things. However, I don't think that we will likely reach a place where it is useless because, like I said, sex and gender are not the same thing, but they are related. And I experience a vulnerability to violence on the basis of my sex, which informs, for me, my gender, right? And I'm not talking about, oh, I'm oppressed, blah, blah, blah. I'm just being reality based. I'm a young woman. I am more vulnerable to violence than other people, right? And so I think, like, I don't think that's going to change about the world. I mean, I have so many different feelings about this. I think I view this a little bit differently because when I was talking about, like, we're just talking about improbabilities, right? Because I'm talking about on average and you can make generalizations when it is on average, right? Because that's by definition what it is. I am not making a mandate or an expectation. I think this is partially important to me because I have a health condition that is exclusive to my sex. And who do I go look for in terms of resources and advice towards these things? I'm going to be looking for people that express a female gender. Now, this isn't going to be exclusively who experiences this problem. That's definitely not true. But it's just like who's going to likely have the more resources put out about this thing? It's very unlikely for me to be finding someone who is a trans man, like, talking about what I deal with, or like, we can't
No,
be in a perfect world. We would be like that non-diffuse, but our brains are organized to search for and attain information on the basis of judgments in what we observe. And
okay.
it's not me being against protecting the minority just
I didn't
by
say that. I didn't say that. I didn't say it. When I was using the words "you," I was talking about society and expectations that comes with definitions of word. Just before we go to the next question, none of that communication that you were hoping for and none of that will go away because we still have the concept of biology and sex and stuff. I don't think any of that will be removed from your toolkit of being able to find people and community and shared experiences with the language that we already have around sex. I think all of that is still accessible. Okay. And we also have other people that have similar problems that is not correlated with their sex, but is connected to their shared experiences, that are still able to form community. For example, if people who are suffering from AIDS, AIDS is not connected to anyone's sex, but people who are suffering from AIDS, they are able to get together and provide community and share, provide identity around a shared experience, without needing to create like a societal a norm, an identity that goes beyond that shared experience that they have around that problem, right? So for example, if you're having a problem that is somehow tied to your biology, you could create identities and communities around that specific shared experience without defining a new term that includes other people that don't have that shared experience, and while having the negative effect of creating expectations from them, right? So that is done, that is possible. You don't
Yeah,
need
like I'm an
the gender
inclusive
language.
person.
No, I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, right? Like I just think like removing the gender language from the equation does not stop anybody from creating identity around the shared experiences that you mentioned, whether it's like any form of disease or any form of shared experience or anything like that. People create identities around communities and shared experiences like that, and it's actually very much more effective when it's very specific rather than something broader that includes other people, right? So I don't think any of that would be lost.
I think
But anyways,
I'm having, to be honest, like a personal reaction to this, because when I thought the way that you do, that was the period of my life where I hated myself for being a woman. I hated it. I despised myself. I carried shame. It took me a long, long, long time to be okay with being a woman. And
yep, you've been
yeah.
deal with. Okay, so I think like this is the problem. I think a lot of extremists that made you suffer from the experience, like I'm not suggesting the things that they are, and I think like the problem with a lot of Wokistani far right leftists is that they have made this conversation so toxic that if I'm like any form of suggestion of what, like I am not doing anything like that. Like I'm not, like I'm just talking about the utility of setting expectations of society. Okay, there's nothing even remotely close to what they're doing, but they have made this entire conversation so toxic that if people will have associate what I'm saying to what they are, and that's why it's hard to even be listened to, because you'll just be grouped with them, right? And that's why they have been so harmful in their effect on these kind of conversations. This is a very important conversation. By the way, I don't think I think gender will be abolished at some point anyway. I mean, what's gender when we're all in the metaverse, right? But anyway, so let's go.
Stony is asking me if I
point.
would have transitioned. I almost transitioned, not as a
Yeah.
teenager, but as a young adult.
See, that's, yeah. That, yeah.
But I don't like to talk about it because people will make it seem like I hate trans people, when I have so many people in my life who I've personally witnessed go through really, really hard things because of their experience as trans people. And it's a community I care about a lot. So when I talk about what I go through, like people make it seem like it's going to be used to hurt other people, and I don't like it.
I'm sorry. So I'm sorry if I brought, but when I use the triggered here, I'm not using the word in an insulting way. I'm actually using it in the proper way. Like, I'm sorry if I brought some bad experiences. Like, I completely I don't actually. But I get it if this is like, this brings back memories that you don't like from. For people who don't know, Susanna used to be associated with Antifa type people, right? And they made her hate herself. So this is not. So she does have a negative reaction to any to some of the talk that might seem like is suggesting what they're suggesting, she does have some negative reaction to it.
And the thing is, I understand it very well. I literally studied critical gender studies in university. I was awarded honors for my writings in the subject, right? Like I won like out of my entire senior class. Like they paid me for it. So like I know the arguments extremely well, right? And personally, it really damaged me. Oh, Bahara Sultan is here. He's saying I'm with you, Susie.
All right, somebody was complaining that this is a boring topic and constantly demanding us to switch. But I'm gonna let you know that you're not the king of our live chat. CC Menace, like here, he or she enjoyed the conversation. So some people like this conversation. Okay, so
Atheist Republic needs your help. We've been the target of many legal attacks by Hindu nationalists ever since our founder, Armin Navabi, blasphemed against Hindu deities. We have retained legal counsel to help us defend our access to our community in India. We have started a fundraiser that will help us afford to tackle many legal issues, including judicial harassment and censorship. Whatever you can contribute will go a long ways in helping us in this fight. Link in the description below.